Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Christina Smith, and I am a graduating senior in the College of Fine Arts with a concentration in voice performance. So this is my project, Moshing in Community in the Boston Underground Music Scene. My project advisor was Victor Coelho of the Ethnomusicology Department. So what you might be wondering, as I was in my first experience with moshing, what does that mean? So moshing is a style of dance that originated in the underground hardcore punk scenes of Washington, D.C. and San Francisco slightly later. It's an interesting dance that has been deemed a combat dance by some theorists, and it involves participants forming a mosh pit, the main structure of the dance, and basically ramming their bodies into one another with their elbows down. A lot of torso movement and running. There are different types, but this is a good example of the classic mosh pit. It's obviously hard to see what's going on, and that was my experience when I decided to do this project too. What's happening here? So I'm sure you've all seen this image before. This is a typical animal cell. A public domain image from the internet. Thank you very much. And so present in this image, we have the main factors of a cell that I think correspond to those of a mosh pit. The first being the nucleus, which is the brain of the cell. The mitochondria are the powerhouse of the cell. The cytoplasm is the area through which all of the organelles move, and the cell membrane is the area that keeps everything in. This is the diagram of a mosh pit. It looks pretty similar. So the main points of a mosh pit are the main contact point in the center, which is like the nucleus of the cell, and it is where the most contact happens. It's where everyone moves through, where contact between 2 or 3 people will happen at once. And it's the energy center as well of the mosh pit. The mosh pit is both a physical and a metaphysical sort of space. It only exists when people are dancing within it. So as this energy center moves, the mosh pit moves with it. Then you see the little moshers who are similar to the mitochondria, and together they create the energy required to sustain the structure of the dance by moving around, running, dancing, hitting each other. The outer edge of the circle is a porous membrane, a lot like the cell membrane. So it's made up of individuals who face inward to the bulk of the dance. And when individual moshers are flying around and maybe would be entering the rest of the audience, causing danger and injury, they will grab them and push them back in. It also makes it more fun. So where does moshing come from? What makes it happen? That was one of my main questions. Is it a musical factor that forces people to do this or causes them to do it? They're not forced to. But, or is it a sociological factor? So I looked into several factors that are correlated with the dance. So something I looked into was heavy music. So moshing is generally associated with metal music and punk music, though people will do it in other contexts, and it's weird. So something that's extremely important in making music heavy is using the low end. So the lowest end of the pitch spectrum. To achieve these extremely low notes, musicians will often tune their instruments down, and especially guitarists and basses. They do this by loosening the strings, and it creates not only a lower sound, but also a buzzier sound that sounds a little bit like industrial noise. And that's where we get into distortion as well. Distortion comes from both the tuning down of instruments and from volume. Volume is extremely important. As you see, it's one of our points as well. But distortion originated when instrumentalists would turn up their amps higher than the threshold of the amp. And therefore, the amps only had this much space for sound waves to exist in, but instruments were turned up to this much space. I wish I had my diagram with me, but it created a squared off top and bottom to the sound wave that creates this warm, rich, buzzy sound, which also goes into volume, my last point. makes it chaotic, makes it overwhelming. The final point is rhythmic change. So it's very important to heavy music styles and to dance music styles in general to have a steady pulse and rhythm. However, a lot of heavy styles will use this technique of switching between half-time, full-time, and double-time. So, for example, if you were to switch from half-time to common time or full-time, it would be something such as tucka, 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 to tucka, 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 tucka. So it creates a contrast and increases the energy. So yeah, but while also maintaining a steady pulse that allows people to continue dancing. The next thing I looked into were the sociological factors. So extremely important ones are familiarity with the music. This, in a lot of the interviews I conducted, was the most important things bands thought caused people to mosh. And I looked at it in a sense of there's a listening phase and a feeling phase. As soon as you can enter the listening phase, exit the listening phase, and enter the feeling phase, that's when you're able to dance. So once you understand the music and how it's structured and what you're supposed to do, then you can enter that realm. So this can either go with people listening to your music recorded or having a predictable style of music. So establishing your rhythm early, establishing your style early within a song. The next important thing is space. I thought of space in two ways. So space is in venue and area in which people can move. So there are certain venues with chairs that make it impossible to form a mosh pit. Certain venues that actually don't allow it because of fear of injury. And so that's very important, but also a social space is important. This expectation that you're coming to mosh with other people who want to as well. And a space where you can feel safe and like no one is going to hurt you either physically or socially. The final and most important thing is energy, which is a little difficult to pin down. More of a metaphysical idea, but it's this exchange between the audience and the performers. The audiences come in to give the performers something, and the performers give them something in turn, or vice versa. You can view it in a few different ways. So this space doesn't exist without this energy exchange. To look into the purpose of moshing, I wanted to look at some misconceptions. One misconception I've found a lot is that moshing is inherently violent. While moshing is inherently dangerous, moshing is not inherently violent. The entire point of the dance is that you're putting yourself in the line of fire. You're putting yourself in the space of danger. But you have people there to catch you. So there are lots of rules to moshing that are unwritten, a sort of moshing etiquette, that includes things like keeping your elbows in so you don't hit people in the face, or never crowd surfing because it's annoying. And people could also get hurt. That's where the majority of injuries come from. There have been 9 deaths total related to moshing, and this was between 1994 and 2006, when moshing was at its height, while there are 9 deaths per day due to distracted driving. And they're due to the same things, breaking the codes that have been created for people's safety. The next point is that moshing is inherently angry and hateful and aggressive. This is the exact opposite of what I found from interviews of people in the scene. People go to moshing because it's a way to form community and connection without words. So it's really easy to think this thing that looks like a riot is a riot, but in fact, it is a space for people to come together without judgment of one another and to pick each other up and support each other. And I thought this quote from one of my interviewees was really excellent for describing this. "Even if I didn't talk to them before, during, or after, I leave the show feeling like I've made friends." And that's the essence of it. That's the point of dance. That's the point of human connection, is expressing yourself and expressing yourself to others so they can relate with you. So overall, moshing is fun, and it's more structured and more nuanced than people think. And as long as people can follow these rules and codes, it can be a safe and fun way to express yourself to others. Thank you very much. Does anyone have questions? Yes?
Is there a reason after 2006 that moshing became less prevalent? I might have missed that. I came in.
No, it's okay. I didn't give a reason. No, not necessarily. It moved to underground scenes more at that point because authorities began to crack down on it. In like the later 2000s or early 2010s, police were like, what the heck is this? We have to quash it. So it moved more underground. And those are the communities where it is safer and kinder because it's not a bunch of people coming in thinking they're going to rough people up, basically. So.
Are there any cases, I know from that quote it seemed more like a non-verbal sort of communication. Are there any cases where it forms into some sort of verbal interaction and forms some sort of political harm or anything like that?
So punk is political, and punk has always been political. It's been an expression of rebellion since its inception. But I think the question is not whether it's harmful politically, but whether it is influential politically. Because this idea of rebellion being harmful isn't necessarily true. And it's more of a desire for something different than a desire for something screwed up, I guess. Oh.
In the negative sense?
Yeah.
There are subcultures, back during the Cold War, when cracked down on marijuana users because marijuana users were the ones who were kind of rebelling against the war.
Totally.
So that kind of subculture.
That's definitely part of it too. It's definitely a part of authorities thinking that it's something that's dangerous when it might not be. Yeah.
Do you know the specific causes of death for the 9 deaths related to moshing?
I don't know the specific causes of death. They weren't stated in any articles I found, but I did find one study that was mechanisms of injury at a music festival related to moshing, and the vast majority were crowd surfing accidents, which is dumb. Not actually part of moshing. It's a separate thing that gets lumped in. So, but there were also some things related to assault, which can happen because the media publicizes moshing as somewhere that people can come and get out their aggressions and injure people without consequence. So people flock to it that way, especially at larger festivals, much less in the underground. Yes.
Children really like rough and tumble play, which involves a lot of contact, and it can, but it's play, and the kids are learning how to adjudicate relationships and anticipate who's weaker, who's stronger, how to have physical contact without harming. It sounds to me like this is kind of like an adult form of wanting to continue on this practice of play that is very physical.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if you could say more about those codes that are there. You just said to keep your arms in, but what else?
Sure. Yeah, that's a really interesting point, and definitely something I will think about. So some of the codes there are websites online that put the written codes down, but things such as, like you said, keep your elbows in, avoid crowd surfing. There's also this code of if someone falls down in the mosh pit, you have to pick them up. In case they get trampled. And it's something that actually turns into this really beautiful thing of you fall down and immediately there are 6 sets of hands pulling you up. It's very nurturing. So, and then other things such as if someone loses an accessory, hold it in the air so they can claim it. Things like that. Things that help it to be safe in a kind environment.
And also help it to be social.
Yes, definitely. Yes?
Curious about some of the demographics of the subjects that you interviewed, like gender demographics, how old are they?
Yeah, mostly male, the subjects I interviewed, and usually in their mid-20s or a little bit younger. So these are people who have usually already graduated from college, especially Berklee College of Music. That's a really prominent college within the scene here. So these were specifically Boston people and people present in this scene. There are also some women present in this, but it's more of a male thing than a female thing, actually. You can take that as you will.
How
I run in this circle, so it was kind of just people I know. Yeah. Thank you.